The Galactic Council's great chamber smelled of recycled nitrogen and quiet arrogance. Ambassador James R. Harlo of Earth sat at the small hexagonal table designated for provisional species, a table half the size of every other delegation's, positioned 3 tiers below the main floor, angled slightly so that the overhead lights cast an unflattering glare across the human face. It had not been an accident. Nothing in this chamber ever was. Harlo was 61 years old. He had served in the United States Navy, earned 2 doctorates, and spent 11 years negotiating trade frameworks between sovereign nations on Earth before the first alien contact changed everything. He had silver hair, a jaw like carved oak, and the particular stillness of a man who had learned, through hard repetition, that silence made other people nervous. The Vethkai delegate rose first. The Vethkai were tall, gray-skinned, and deeply convinced of their own superiority in the manner of people who had never been seriously challenged. High Chancellor Orvin extended all 4 of its speaking appendages in a gesture of formal condescension. "We address the matter of Earth's petition for full council membership," Orvin announced, its translator rendering the words in crisp English for Harlo's benefit. "After review, the council finds the petition premature. Your species has existed in space for fewer than 40 years. Your conflicts are still ongoing. Your atmospheric management is elementary. You are, by every metric we apply, children at a table meant for adults." Laughter, or whatever the alien approximation of it was, rippled through the upper tiers. 3 species clicked their feeding appendages. The Dorvani observers pulsed a pale yellow, which Harlo's cultural briefing notes identified as mockery. He did not move. He let the sound fill the room and drain away like dirty water. Orvin was not finished. It produced a holographic record, Earth's entire political history compressed into a damning 12-minute presentation. Wars, pollution indexes, species extinction rates, economic inequality ratios. Every failure humanity had ever documented, presented with clinical precision to an audience of 47 alien civilizations. The Vethkai had done their research. "You ask for a seat among the founders of interstellar civilization," Orvin concluded, its voice carrying the practiced warmth of a surgeon explaining why a patient was already dead. "We ask you instead to observe, to learn, to return in perhaps 200 years, when you have demonstrated the basic competencies we require. Until then, Earth's trade agreements will remain under council oversight. Your military assets will be inventoried annually, and your ambassador will speak only when formally recognized, which, given today's assessment, will be infrequent." Every camera in the chamber, and there were thousands, broadcasting to every inhabited world in the Accord, focused on James Harlo's face. The Vethkai wanted the image. A human, humbled. A species, put in its place. It would play well at home. Harlo looked at Orvin for a long moment. Then he looked at the chamber. Then, slowly, he opened the small folder in front of him. A physical folder, paper, which every alien delegate found bewildering and slightly barbaric, and he read 3 lines from it. "I would like to invoke Article 14, he said. "Right of direct response. 30 minutes, uninterrupted." The chamber went very quiet. Most species waived Article 14. It was considered aggressive to use it. Harlo had just used it in front of 47 civilizations and the full broadcast record of the known galaxy. Harlo stood. He buttoned his jacket, charcoal gray, American-made wool, unremarkable, and he walked to the central speaking platform without being invited. He placed both hands on the podium rail, and he spoke without notes, without a translator device, in English, because every civilization in this room had spent years learning human languages before humans had learned theirs, and he knew it. "You showed us our wars," he said. "I'd like to talk about what came after them." He walked the council through it, not defensively, not with apology, but with the flat, factual precision of a man reading coordinates. Humanity had fought its bloodiest war, then rebuilt its enemies from rubble and called them allies. It had split the atom, nearly destroyed itself with it, and then, while the ash was still settling, written the frameworks that kept it from being used again for 80 years and counting. It had watched its own industries poison the sky, publicly documented the damage, litigated against its own corporations, and begun, imperfectly, slowly, but genuinely, to reverse it. "You presented our failures as evidence of what we are," Harlo said. I'm presenting them as evidence of something else entirely. We record our failures. We publish them. We argue about them in public, in legislatures, in newspapers, across kitchen tables at 2 in the morning. We have spent centuries building the specific institutional capacity to catch ourselves doing wrong and correct it. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but persistently. He paused. The room was completely silent now. Even the ambient hum of the translation systems seemed to have quieted. Show me, he said, any other species in this chamber that has done the same. Show me a Vethkai public record of the Dorvani suppression. Show me the Lyrith Council's acknowledged death toll from the 7th expansion. Show me any document, any single document, where your governments told your people the truth about what you did to get here. You let that land. We're not children at your table. We're something you don't have a category for yet. The council recessed. It did not vote. Orvin made a brief procedural statement. Earth's petition would be tabled for further review, which was the diplomatic equivalent of ignoring something and hoping it went away. By midnight, Galactic Standard, Harlo's speech had been broadcast to every inhabited system in the Accord. Not by Earth. The Council's own open record systems carried it automatically, as they did all Article 14 responses. 47 civilizations watched a 61-year-old human stand at a podium and ask questions that no one in that chamber had been asked before, at least not out loud, at least not on record. The messages began arriving at the Earth delegation's communications array at 0200 hours. The first was from the Tyrellian academic community, 17 researchers requesting access to human historical archives, specifically the documentation of the Nuremberg trials. The second was from a mid-tier species called the Ovani, who had no seat at the council and had watched the broadcast from a relay station at the edge of Accord space. Their message was 3 sentences long. We have been trying to get a petition heard for 60 years. We did not know Article 14 existed. Can we speak with your ambassador? By dawn, by the arbitrary dawn of the station's rotation cycle, 11 such messages had arrived. 3 of them were from species currently listed as pre-provisional, which meant the council had formally decided they were too primitive to acknowledge. They had watched the broadcast on pirated relay signals. It was Harlo's aide, a young woman named Lieutenant Colonel Dana Merritt, who first used the phrase. She was reviewing the overnight communications, and she said, quietly, to no one in particular, "Sir, I think we just burned the old framework down." Harlo looked at the message queue. He looked at the names, species, coordinates, petition numbers, decades of waiting compressed into 3-sentence transmissions. He looked at the one from the Ovani and read it again. Then he looked out the station's narrow viewport at the slow turn of stars. The Vethkai would file a procedural complaint. The council would convene a review committee. Orvin would call it destabilizing. There would be a great deal of very expensive diplomatic machinery pointed at a single human ambassador in the 30 minutes he had spent standing at a podium asking questions. None of that was wrong. All of it was coming. Draft responses to all 11, Harlo said. Formal ones. Use the full treaty letterhead. Merritt looked at him. That's going to make them very angry, sir. Yes, he said. It is. He picked up his coffee, actual coffee, shipped from Earth, a minor diplomatic extravagance, and he drank it slowly while the stars turned and the message queue kept filling, one transmission at a time, from the edges of a galaxy that had just discovered humanity was not, in fact, asking for permission anymore. The old treaties had been built on a simple assumption, that Earth needed the Council more than the Council needed Earth. By dawn, that assumption was ash. What came next was not war. Harlo had no interest in war. What came next was something the Vethkai had no word for, because they had never needed one. A renegotiation. On human terms. In the open. On the record. Exactly the way humanity had always done its most important work.